So China mainland is one of our most important and most strategic markets.
What is the sentiment towards China now in the global investment community?
It's constructive, but selective.
China is really in the forefront, using AI for get better, using AI for good.
So our job is to understand what's noise and what is really a secular trend that's going to impact, kind of the investments over the longer term.
We are in CDF, so I noticed that Prudential is attended CDF regularly. So why CDF matters to you?
So firstly, it's great to be back at China Development Forum, and I've been coming to China Development Forum for many years. I always find the platform very interesting and very, very productive for me. It's a great opportunity to learn and understand about the strategic outlook for China. And this year, it is specifically important given the recent announcements around the 15th five-year plan. I had the privilege to hear Premier Li Qiang. And I thought it was excellent. I thought the ongoing focus on quality development. I was specifically struck by his comments around how technology and innovation can create newer and bigger markets, how we need to collectively collaborate in terms of moving the growth agenda forward. And I was very pleased when he mentioned about confidence, responsibility, and action. And that resonates because that's what Prudential is trying to do as well.
Yeah.
And in many ways, when you trace back the history of our existence in the Chinese market, we have been very much aligned with the strategy that the Chinese government has. So be it the progress towards Healthy China 2030, or for that matter, addressing some of the challenges of the silver economy.
Chinese society is aging rapidly, and there is a strong narrative about the aging and under-insurance. And do you see its demand translating into the willingness to pay? And if not, what is the barrier?
I think it's a great question. So let me first step back and explain you two significant trends that are not only impacting the China market, but impacting many markets globally. One is health and customers being concerned about health and whether they have enough savings, God forbid, if there is a health situation in their family, specifically in the light of medical inflation. And second is about retirement. And there are many economies across the world that are aging rapidly. And as you rightly pointed out, China has a similar challenge as well. China is going to have roughly about 400 million people over the age of 60 by 2040. And it's great to see that China is anticipating that challenge and preparing in advance. That is where I believe companies like Prudential, who have international expertise, have been doing this for almost 180 years and serving customers across different markets globally, can bring to China and combine that with the local knowledge that we have of the Chinese consumer. You're right in suggesting that sometimes consumers are resistant to think about retirement because retirement seems like a very distant thing. But you know what? Years fly by very quickly. And soon enough, you're at the doorstep of retirement and saying, well, I don't have enough savings.
To wrap up your Chinese strategy, China enters a new policy cycle this year, which means the start of the next 5-year plan. My question is, Where do you see the clearest overlap between China's priorities over the next 5 years and the Prudential's core capabilities?
Yeah, I think great question, and I would want to go back to where I started, which is we've been in this joint venture relationship with CITIC, where the partnership has only grown stronger over the last 25 years. And if you look at those last 25 years, we would have served more than 15 million customers. And if you graduate that forward into the 15th year, 5-year plan, those are the things that are going to be very important for the ongoing economic prosperity and stability of China. That's the biggest attraction that we have when we put investment dollars into China, which is stability and predictability and economic prosperity.
Let's talk something about the opening up of Chinese financial industry. China is opening up to wholly foreign-owned insurance asset managers recently. So how significant is this to you strategically?
Well, it's very significant because opening up and bringing international expertise to serve the Chinese consumer will bring innovation, will bring competition, which will only make the solutions even sharper and better for the Chinese consumer. So we couldn't be more excited. I'm delighted with the fact that we already have an insurance WUFI in Beijing. We have an asset management business under the name of eSpring. We operate that in Shanghai. I think it's a great platform for us to be able to connect China with the international financial centers, as well as bring our investment expertise to China to create bespoke solutions for the Chinese consumer.
If we sit down again in 3 years, what would have to go right in China for you to say that this market has really delivered?
I think at the end of the day, it is how the strategies and planning impact the livelihood of consumers. And if we sit 3 years down the line and we have more customers who've come up the chain and have more value and more prosperity, I think that is going to be really the defining thing around the success of any strategy for that matter. So I think when you sit 3 years down the line and look at some of the progress on these indicators, I think that will be true success. And I'm sure China will do a great job on all of them.
What is the biggest risk that it doesn't?
I think it's all about, at the end of the day, execution, right? And I think I can see the continuity of strategy on high quality development. At the end of the day, it will come down to coordinating and ensuring that you're executing for consumers and executing to make their livelihoods a lot more simpler and a lot more better.
China enters a new policy cycle this year, which means the start of the next 5-year plan.
I think the structural opportunity in China has been compelling for years, and I believe it will be compelling for many, many years to come.
Nobody gets rich by investing. It's about the outcome that is important.
AI, we both know that ABB benefited a lot from the recent AI boom, especially the massive investment. So would you please tell me more about how ABB is benefiting from the recent AI boom investment?
Yeah, ABB is placed everywhere where you talk about more electrification and more automation. And AI is the best example, especially when building these massive new data centers. Some of them are so big now, we're talking about 1 gigawatt. But to put that in perspective, it means like you have your own power plant in the backyard. And we are involved in all that electrical network to make that happening. And it needs to be safe and reliable because these data centers cannot shut down. They need to work 24/7 with 5 or 6 nines when you talk about reliability. So a lot of backup solutions, So it's not just providing real good hardware, you know, switch gear, all that electrical equipment that is needed, but it's also the software that is driving all these data centers so they are sure to get the right reliability because, as I say, these data centers cannot fail.
So you mean across the entire AI value chain, ABB's role is much more than just the expansion of electronic infrastructure?
Yeah, we need to get those electronics to the chip so that the computing can happen.
Yeah.
But that is all these equipment that is needed in different steps. You know, this comes from a high voltage level, it's been transformed down to a lower level, and then it comes out into where the computing is happening. So all that whole infrastructure is where ABB is building what we call switchgear in our industries for medium and lower voltages. And that is where it's also more and more now, this need to be with this big power, you also need to have backup solution with could be with generators, but also with battery energy storage systems. So all of that whole infrastructure about providing reliable power into the data center, that's really the core of what we do in that space.
You know, the AI world, basically it's a two-horse racing, US and China. But US and China are taking a very different approach. So which approach do you think will work in the future?
Well, I don't see it as one or the other. It is a bit different. In the US, there's a lot of investment to machine learning, into this large language model.
Yeah.
Those are all enablers. This is like the machine that is going to be the AI machine of the future. On the other side, in China, has been taking much more looking at already using the machine and say, how can we make benefits? You know, those are in the end the output. You don't make money from building the machine, you make money from using the machine. Yeah. That's the generation of better processes, you know, faster and cheaper. That's kind of what's the outcome of when you have AI applications. It always goes into the bucket. Is it my products or solutions getting better, or can I reduce costs? And AI can help on both sides. And that is the great opportunities. And I think China is really in the forefront, using AI for get better, using AI for good. That is the next step. And that's because in the end, it has to be a business case. Nobody gets rich by investing. It's about the outcome that is important. And that's where AI will help over time.
China enters a new policy cycle, the start of the 15th five-year plan. So in the next five-year plan, where do you see the clearest overlap between our country's priorities with your core capabilities?
When I look at the new plan, it's right about high quality development and how China is taking also now, continue on this journey that I've been on for a long time, but taking the next step. And there, when I look at ABB, we're talking about helping our customers outrun and helping them to become leaner and cleaner. Leaner, more productive, cleaner, less emissions. And I think when I talk about, listen to the high quality development and the plan for China, it's very much the same. It's about improving life for everyone, but it's also making companies more competitive, making them also more productive, but at the same time reducing emissions. The peak 2030 targets seems to be within reach, which is good news for China, but even better news for the globe. And that is where also with us and ABB's technology can help on that journey, because we have to kind of take the world forward, but at the same time, we need to be more resource efficient. We need to reduce emissions. And I think China is on a good track.
ABB is not an energy company, but you worked very closely with the energy companies. We both see recently the impact to the energy market due to what is happening in the geopolitical side. So my question is, how much importance would you give to the energy source diversification today, especially under today's context?
I think the situation just shows the importance of being more independent of one single source, because we need a multiple of energy sources, that be solar and wind renewables, but also from nuclear, you have coal as base, and you have gas and oil as well, part of that equation. but you cannot be dependent on only one. It shows us today the dependency, which quickly turns into a problem. I mean, this is where you have to
Security problem.
that it turns quickly into a security issue. So this is where we need to have more sources, and I think there China is working very much in the right direction. You know, we're all looking at how can every country build resilience? How can we be more independent from one single source? And that's what is building to self-sufficiency in one side, but it's always about resilience of a local society. That's, I think, what every main markets or every regions have on the agenda today, because this becomes part of daily life, so that people can go on with their daily life without big interruptions. You don't make money from building the machine, you make money from using the machine.
New technology comes, it's like water going down a hill. You can try to stop it, but eventually it's going to find its way down.
Now we are at CDF. So what's your takeaway about Premier's speech this morning?
I think it was interesting. You know, I think there's a real clear message on so this is the 15th fifth-year plan,
Yeah.
5-year plan.
Yeah.
And it's useful in that one thing you learn with China is they're very clear when they say this is our 5-year plan, that's what they do. So you could see, you know, things like manufacturing continues to be really, really important. There's technologies, robotics, and how they're approaching sort of consumer demand. They've been very clear that it might be slower on stimulating consumer demand, but actually it'll have a longer lasting effect.
So, you know, you mentioned the 15th 5-year plan, which means that China enters a new policy cycle. What is the clearest sign that you see overlap between the country's priorities over the next 5 years and your core capability?
Well, I mean, so at Franklin Templeton, what do? We help people achieve their most important financial goals, right? And so if you keep a healthy, growing economy, people have excess spending, excess savings,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing for us. We help people invest those things. So if you're a healthy economy, there's more for people to invest. If you're a growing economy, there's more for people to invest. And so, you know, having that 5-year plan where they're very clear on the areas that they're focused on for growing, that's an opportunity for us.
Franklin Templeton is one of the largest asset managers in the world. You are the CEO. Maybe you are the best person to answer this question. What is the sentiment towards China now in the global investment community?
I would say it's constructive, but selective, right? And so I think because you see in the 5-year plan, they've already stated what's important.
Yes.
Those are going to be well-supported sectors. So you have things like manufacturing, robotics, the BYD as far as a car company, you know, the automotive companies, battery technology, you know, places where China, I think, is leading in many ways in the technology. Those are always good opportunities on investments.
The US equity market outperformed the rest of the world for many years, for over a decade.
Yeah.
But starting from 2025, the global investors are starting to reassess the kind of US exceptionalism. Do you believe the next decade will see a more multipolar capital market system?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's important to think about is as people were either not necessarily divesting, in some cases divesting from the US market, but other cases they were just allocating future capital to different markets. You got to remember the dollar was very challenged last year, right?
Yes.
And if you were a non-dollar investor, it was such a massive headwind to your investment that it made all for whatever performance the US market is, it was kind of wiped out by the depreciation of the dollar. So I think that the investment in US markets also depends on where you sit and how you feel about the dollar. So that's one. The second thing I think US innovation they are still at the forefront. I think China's in there, and depending on which area of technology, one is maybe better than the other, but they're both honestly superior to pretty much any other markets out there. And I honestly, other than the US and China, I just don't really see the kind of innovation happening in AI.
Jenny, we are only 3 months in this new year, 2026, but we have already witnessed a lot of amazing things.
Doesn't it feel like it's been a year in 3 months?
So, how much volatility are you expecting this year?
How long do you think this war in the Middle East is going to go
I
on?
don't know. I don't know.
No, these things are all factors in volatility in the market. And as I said, I actually think the AI disruption that's going to come, that's also going to add volatility. And so, I think we're living in times where it is volatile. And so I think one of the really important things at Franklin Templeton, we're long-term investors. And so our job is to understand what's noise and what is really a secular trend that's going to impact, kind of the investments over the longer term. Because actually, if it's just noise, it often becomes a great investment opportunity because the market, reacts to it. You can invest in when you're contrarian against others, knowing that it's going to come back and move it. And then if it's truly a secular change, then you got to make sure you understand that and position your portfolio for that.
That comes the big question. How to tell the difference between the market noise and the things really matter?
Look, I think one of the great advantages of Franklin Templeton is we have investment feet on the ground in 87% of the world's GDP. These are people in local markets that are scouring, they're reading the local paper, they're talking to people locally to really understand what's going on. So I think one of the most important things in understanding the news is how up to date are you on the latest information? And that tends to be very local. And so, you have to discern. You have a lot of experts around where you're getting information. We have some really amazing consultants that talk to our investment teams. Plus, more importantly, we have feet on the ground in these markets. And that's how you have to determine what's short term and what's longer term.
But, when it comes to the AI competition, if we see the world, US and China, we took a very different approach, right? Do you think which approach will work in the future?
I think you need both, right? So I think we're going to both end up trying to figure out both. The US needs to have adoption. China is going to continue to build. They actually will build some of their LLM models.
Yes.
I think you're going to, like I said, and it's so early again in this that I don't know that any of us know. And I think that the mistake would be being afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be afraid of it. New technology comes, it's like water going down a hill. You can try to stop it, but eventually it's going to find its way down. This AI is going to find its way into every business, every sector. And so it's better to try to figure out how you can leverage it and be able to provide more services to your clients in a more cost-effective way than it is to be so afraid of it. Because if you're afraid of it, your competition is going to leave you behind.
Looking ahead to next 5 years, what do you think are the 3 most important trends shaping this industry?
I think what we talked about with private markets is critical. I think the next one is personalization. I mean, it's amazing the tools that are now there, to personalize your own portfolio based on your goals, right?
Yes.
And then I think the third big probably area that is important is tokenization. And it's more around blockchain technology itself.
Yeah.
Blockchain technology, forget sort of crypto world, but just talk blockchain technology. The technology enables certain things. It enables a source of truth. So
maybe that's a new concept of money.
Well, so that's exactly right.
Right?
You're definitely seeing this kind of, and money's money, right? A fiat currency is kind of money, but the ability to use it more efficiently, and I think it's going to open up. I think honestly, the rails of financial services are going to be replaced by blockchain just because the efficiencies that it has.